The other day in class, I ran this activity with my students, something to help them understand what life might look like financially once they graduate. I think about how when I was in school, no one really had the conversation, and we were still in that era of no one talks about money, don't share in the workplace. So I felt like I just walked in kind of blind. So what we did was we talked through the average salary of what they may make. We talked about what the taxes will be, loan repayments, rent, grocery, all of the things, the fixed and variable expenses. And I can tell you the energy at first was pretty light. People were joking and laughing, tossing out numbers that were kind of ridiculous at times to my ears, but they were also talking about the kind of cars they would get, the apartments they would have. And I can tell you, I'm all for it. I love to live the dream and to figure out and have aspirations. But as we started to subtract those expenses, student loans, insurance, retirement, utilities, then the laughter faded a little bit. And there was this quiet moment where I guess the reality of things started to settle in and sink in. Eyes opened a little wider, heads tilted as they were kind of looking at the monies dwindling away. You could almost see that the wheels were turning, but not in a panicked kind of way, but almost like their perspective was starting to open. And then most people couldn't believe how much was left. They didn't realize how much would be taken out or how quickly what seemed like a large amount of money could go very quickly. But underneath those reactions, especially when we got to the break and I got to talk to them kind of one-on-one, what I really heard was the money stories. The stories about how people grew up thinking about money, what it meant, how to get it, what happens if you lose it. And it hit me. Because if I'm honest, the same moment, almost parallel, it made me reflect on my own money stories. See, I was in a family and a community that we didn't really talk about money. And you, for darn sure, as a kid, didn't ask your parents about it. That's just one of those things you didn't do. And to be straight up and truthful with you, I didn't realize how poor we were until I filled out my FAFSA for college. Now, we weren't in what some would call abject poverty. My mom and my sister did an amazing job making ends meet, figuring things out, making sure that we never went without. Those women were like amazing. They were resourceful. They stretched every dollar. They made it work. They worked hard. They did overtime. They did all of the things that you were intended to do to make things work for your family. But in hindsight, some of those things growing up kind of made a little more sense as to why the big celebrations were more around the holidays. We didn't always have money for, I don't know, Chick-fil-A or something. Makes a little more sense why I got the, do you have McDonald's kind of money when I would ask. And now being able to look back at it, I remember when I felt that FAFSA, not only did things make a lot more sense, but it had made me realize how close we were to skating that line at times. It's funny how poverty doesn't always show up as a lack of things. Sometimes it shows up as a way of thinking, a mindset that has a tendency to whisper to us, well, don't ask for too much. Sometimes it says, stay safe, stay small. Why take that risk? Sometimes it's that we equate money with safety. And while even to this day, I didn't grow up bitter, I didn't grow up resentful, but I did grow up cautious now that I think about it. I learned to play it safe. I learned to avoid risks because I can't think about the idea of losing what I have. And even now, I notice how that old money story shows up in subtle ways. In the way that I think about large purchases before I do them. In how I sometimes strive to have more control over the money that I make, or how I avoid taking any level of risk that feels like gambling. And even if it's small, calculated risks, some that could lead to growth. I double crunch the numbers to make sure, does this seem reasonable? Because somewhere deep down, that old programming, that story, that record that's playing in the background says security is everything. And for years, that's what I chased: security. I pursued the steady paycheck. I pursued the predictable path. I calculated the moves that kept everything in order so that I don't have to be exposed to so much risk. But here's what I truly learned over all of these years of spinning around on this earth is security, it can be a moving target. See, you can hit one level of security and then all of a sudden, because now you're on a different level, your perspective changes, and guess what? It's not enough. You save a little, then you contemplate and worry about should you have saved more? You build something solid and your mind will say, what happens if the other shoe drops or the bottom falls out or crap hits the fan? And after a while, that chase truly, guys, can be just exhausting, because no matter how much you make or how well you plan, true peace doesn't live there. Now, I know you're thinking, well, I would like to try to have more money. I would like to see, Emmanuel, you got that experience. I would like to have more money to see if it feels better. And I get that. But see, what I realized was I didn't need more security. And while I was chasing security, I ended up finding that I needed contentment. Now, don't get me wrong, because I know when some people hear that word, they automatically think that contentment is complacency. And I'm here to tell you it's not. It doesn't mean you stop dreaming. It doesn't mean you stop building. It doesn't mean you stop improving your life. It just means you learn to be grateful for where you are while you're in the process of becoming who you meant to be. And for me, contentment looks like this: having good money habits so that I can take a deep breath before a bill or an unexpected expense, because I did some of the little things ahead of time to prepare for it. Appreciating that having a roof over my head instead of obsessing what is the next upgrade or thing that I can get. How about it's also spending intentionally, not out of fear, not out of guilt, but sometimes out of joy, to reward myself so that I'm not always in this perpetual state of sacrifice and lack. See, contentment is the difference between control and trust. See, control says, if I just plan this out right, if I just time the market, if I just do all of the things, then I'll be safe. But see, what trust says is, even when I can't plan everything, you know what? I'm going to still be okay because I've created a plan with intentionality. I've thought about my long-term future of what I'm trying to pursue. And I think that's where a lot of us get stuck. We get stuck in a space between what we have and what we want, because that space can be dangerous, because that space is where discontentment lives. If the chasm between what we have and what we want is huge, it's dangerous because it convinces us that we're behind. It makes us chase things that we don't really want just to quiet that feeling of lack, that chasm, that openness that feels as though we need it to be filled. And before you know it, you're running after things, chasing after things that don't even matter to you. But when you step back and find contentment, something powerful happens. You realize you don't need everything to go right to be at peace. You stop letting your past dictate how you see your future, and you start measuring success not by how much you have, but how much peace you carry in the day-to-day. So this week, I want to invite you to reflect. What is your money story? Where did it come from? And is it still serving you in your current circumstance? Or how about this? Is that money story running your life? Because the truth is, you can build wealth and still feel broke on the inside, especially if you don't learn to be content. Because I know some people who they get to that number and they figure they can double it. And I was talking to the kids the other day, and the one challenge with money, math, numbers, no matter what number you have in your head, you can always get more. See, the pursuit of money is an insatiable task because there's always a cent more that you can get. So, again, you can chase every dream and still feel empty if your worth is tied to what you earn. But see, when you chase contentment, when you choose gratitude, when you choose gratefulness, that's when you start to live free. And as always, guys, hope this helps. But I always want you to know I love you much.